A man lifted a huge rock and hurled it into a deep pit. Terrified, the pregnant woman hiding in the pit quickly covered her son's mouth, but the sound still caught the attention of the men above. They responded by cutting the rope the two had used to climb down, leaving the mother and child to fend for themselves. Just like that, they were trapped at the bottom of a 10-meter deep pit. The boy's foot had been crushed by the falling rock, and it wouldn't stop bleeding. His mother picked up an ant from the ground and placed it on his wound. She waited until the ant bit down and clung to the open skin, then pinched its body off, sealing the wound with the ant's mandibles like natural stitches. That's how they survived for 3 long days and nights at the bottom of that pit, with no sign of the child's father coming to rescue them. Left with no choice, the pregnant woman decided to try climbing out herself. She tied a wooden stick to the end of a long rope, hoping to hook it to the edge of the pit, but her strength fell just short. Again and again, seeing his mother struggle, the boy helped by collecting more wood. Together, through sheer willpower, they finally managed to throw the rope out, and miraculously, it caught onto the root of a tree. The boy insisted his mother climb out first, saying he would wait for her down there. With her swollen belly, she began the painful climb, panting heavily before even reaching halfway. Then disaster struck. The wooden anchor slipped. The pregnant woman plummeted back down, crashing onto the hard ground. She didn't scream, she couldn't. Instead, she gritted her teeth and tried to control her breathing, fearing harm to the baby inside her. Then things got even worse. A heavy rain began to pour. Water slowly started flooding the pit. She hurried to move her son to higher ground, but standing for too long in the icy water caused unbearable cramps in her abdomen, and the rain just kept falling. Harder and harder, the water rose until it covered her head. She placed her son on her shoulders, holding him above the surface while she remained submerged, holding her breath and blindly feeling for something beneath her. Finally, she found a slightly higher rock and climbed up, lifting her head out of the water. At that moment, she realized her baby was coming. With deep, rapid breaths, she gripped the stone and pushed with everything she had, determined to give birth right there. After countless contractions and agonizing effort, the baby was finally born. But could she now escape with 2 children? And it was all because of her husband Jaguar Paw. Just a few days earlier, Jaguar Paw had been out hunting in the forest with his tribe when they encountered a group of refugees from a neighboring land. Their village had been attacked, forcing them to flee into the wilderness. Jaguar Paw wanted to ask more, but his father, the tribal leader, stopped him. He said the fear in the refugees' eyes could infect their own people, and fear is dangerous. Still, Jaguar Paw couldn't shake the unease. That night, he was haunted by nightmares. He woke up early, startled, and that fear may have saved his entire family. At that moment, their village was being surrounded by ruthless warriors. Jaguar Paw was the first to notice. He rushed back into his home, quietly waking his wife and child. He led them to a large pit behind the village, their only possible hiding place. They began lowering themselves down with a rope, but before they could finish, one of the enemy soldiers spotted him. A fight broke out. The enemy was strong, but Jaguar Paw, raised as a hunter, was faster. He quickly took the soldier down. He told his wife and son to hide deep in the pit and promised to return soon. Back in the village, chaos had erupted. Jaguar Paw saw his father being attacked and ran to help, wrestling the attacker to the ground. Just as he was about to win, the enemy commander stepped in and subdued him with ease. Impressed by Jaguar Paw's skills, the commander decided to keep him alive. His father, however, wasn't so lucky. As revenge for their earlier defeat, the warriors executed Jaguar Paw's father in front of him. Crushed by grief, Jaguar Paw was tied up with the other man on a long bamboo pole. The enemy noticed how he kept glancing toward the pit and suspected something was hidden. To confirm their suspicion, they threw a boulder into the pit. Then, they cut the rope. Watching this, Jaguar Paw knew he had to escape. His family's survival depended on it. The prisoners were marched to the far end of the jungle. Along the way, they spotted the same refugee from before he'd been caught. There was no escaping fate. The captors only took the strong and the women. Children could only stand by helplessly, watching their mothers be dragged away, some trailing behind in quiet tears. At the riverbank, families were torn apart. The eldest daughter promised the others she would take care of them, just like their mother would. One injured man collapsed, unable to walk. Middle-Eye, one of the cruelest soldiers, approached. He drank from his water flask, then jabbed the man's wound to see if he was faking. Jaguar Paw tried to intervene and was beaten brutally for it. Middle-Eye said the injured man had to walk on his own or Jaguar Paw would keep suffering. Guilt-ridden, the wounded man forced himself to his feet, but later, he slipped near a cliff, nearly pulling 5 other prisoners with him. While they struggled for their lives, Middle-Eye squatted nearby watching like it was entertainment. When they finally hauled the man up, Middle-Eye cut his rope and tossed him off the cliff. A cruel message for Jaguar Paw. But this reckless act earned him a harsh rebuke from the commander. They needed strong men, not corpses. That night, they camped in the wild. The next morning, a massive tree fell toward Jaguar Paw. By some miracle, he dodged it. Later, they passed a village ravaged by disease. A sick girl stumbled toward them, begging the soldiers to help her mother. They shoved her aside, cold and uncaring. But when the little girl saw Jaguar Paw, something strange happened. It was as if she were possessed. She began muttering an eerie prophecy. The day will turn to night. The man with the jaguar spirit will bring your end. After another long and grueling march, the prisoners arrived at a massive construction site. Thousands of laborers were working themselves to the bone. Jaguar Paw had never seen so many people in one place. He wondered if this was where their lives would end. But the march continued all the way to the edge of an ancient city. There were even more people here. Some were farming, some were selling pork, others traded crafts and jewelry. For men who had lived their whole lives in the forest, it was a world beyond imagination. Finally, they reached their destination. The women were pulled onto a platform to be auctioned off. The nobles below made their selections, picking slaves like livestock. One elderly woman, unwanted by anyone, was released on the spot. A small mercy in the midst of cruelty. Jaguar Paw and the other men were taken to another area. Their bodies were painted entirely blue. Then, amid the roars of thousands of spectators, they were marched toward a towering altar. Heads rolled down its bloody steps one after another. It became clear they were to be sacrificed. Jaguar Paw and the others were lined up at the top. Sitting above them were the royal family and several high priests. To appease the gods and stop the deadly plague, they believed human hearts must be offered. Jaguar Paw's close friend was pulled to the altar. Terrified beyond reason, he was forced to his knees, his chest carved open, his heart ripped out. Then his head was tossed down the steps. The crowd erupted in ecstatic cheers. Next was Jaguar Paw. As he thought of his wife and children trapped in that pit, fear filled his heart, but he had no choice. He was dragged to the altar. His limbs were held down tight. There was no escape. The prince of the kingdom watched, smiling. But just as the high priest raised his blade, the sky darkened. A solar eclipse turned day into night. The people, devoted worshippers of the sun god, were gripped by terror. The eclipse passed quickly, but the message was clear. The high priest quickly declared that the gods had accepted their offering. The ritual was over. Jaguar Paw was spared, but the general had no intention of letting them go free. He brought the slaves to a shooting range and told them, "If you run across the land ahead, you'll live. In other words, run for your lives if you dare." The prisoners bolted, sprinting as fast as they could, but the soldiers were waiting behind, throwing stones, hurling spears. The air was thick with flying weapons. One by one, the men were struck down. At the finish line, the general's son stood ready to finish off anyone who made it. When it was Jaguar Paw's turn, he dodged and weaved, running in a zigzag pattern to avoid the attacks. Just as he was about to reach the forest line, the general stepped forward. He fired an arrow that struck Jaguar Paw in the abdomen. The general's son rushed forward to finish the job, but tripped over a dying prisoner who clutched at his leg. Jaguar Paw seized the chance. He snapped off the arrow lodged in his side and drove it straight into the prince. The young man stumbled backward and fell, motionless. The general froze for a moment, then charged toward his son in anguish. Jaguar Paw didn't wait. He turned and ran straight into the cornfield. Blinded by fury, the general took up his son's blade and led his men into the field, hunting Jaguar Paw like an animal. The chase had begun. Jaguar Paw reached the edge of the cornfield, but in his panic, he slipped and fell into a massive pit. It was filled with bodies, a dumping ground for the dead. Terrified, he scrambled out, clawing his way up and running toward the forest. Wounded and exhausted, he pushed through the pain, but he knew he couldn't run forever. So he climbed a thick tree and hid among the branches. Sure enough, the soldiers ran past him, but just as the last one passed beneath him, Jaguar Paw's blood dripped from a leaf onto the man's shoulder. Luckily, he didn't notice, but then a low growl echoed through the air. Jaguar Paw turned slowly, and saw a massive black jaguar baring its teeth at him. Every hair on his body stood up. He leapt from the tree and ran with all his might. At the same time, the soldiers noticed the blood and turned back just in time to see Jaguar Paw running straight toward them. Without thinking, they gave chase, but as he reached them, Jaguar Paw suddenly turned and the jaguar kept going. It launched itself at the soldiers, taking one down instantly. Jaguar Paw escaped in the chaos. It took the warriors everything they had to kill the jaguar. In Mayan culture, the The black jaguar was a symbol of the god of darkness. Now they were shaken. How could they chase someone who ran faster than a jaguar? Still, the general was not about to give up. His son had been slain and someone had to pay. Jaguar Paw ran deep into the night. Just when he paused to catch his breath, he saw torches approaching. They were closing in. He fled again. During the pursuit, another soldier was bitten by a venomous snake. The general handed him a blade, telling him to end his own pain, and they kept moving. Soon, they were right behind Jaguar Paw. Arrows flew past him, inches from his head. He dodged them all with incredible agility, but suddenly the ground ended. He stood at the edge of a towering waterfall. There was no going back. He took a deep breath and jumped. The general watched him fall and assumed he was dead, but Jaguar Paw survived the drop. He dragged himself ashore, looked up at the men above and shouted, "This is my forest. You don't belong here." One of the warriors suggested taking the long way down to continue the chase, but the general snapped, "You don't give orders," and stabbed him on the spot. Then he ordered the others to jump. The descent was a disaster. Some smashed into hidden rocks. Others were sucked into whirlpools and drowned. Only 5 men survived and reached the riverbank. Jaguar Paw didn't wait. He took off running again, but soon fell into a swamp. Staying calm, he took a deep breath, lowered his head and swam through. Eventually, his feet touched solid ground, and he climbed out. But he wasn't safe yet. The Maya soldiers were still coming. Jaguar Paw knew running wouldn't save him forever. Then he remembered his father's words, "Fear makes you weak," and at that moment, he decided to fight back. Taking advantage of the mud covering his entire body, Jaguar Paw snatched a wasp nest from a branch and hurled it straight at the soldiers. Within seconds, a swarm of angry wasps engulfed them. The warriors screamed and flailed as they scattered in panic. Jaguar Paw didn't stop. He grabbed a poisonous toad, then snapped a few sharp thorns from a dead tree, fashioning crude but deadly darts. Hiding in the shadows, he rolled a leaf into a tube and used it to blow the darts with precision. The poison dart struck a soldier and he collapsed instantly. Jaguar Paw stepped forward, ready to pick up the man's gear, but suddenly, Middle Eye turned around. Their eyes met. This time, Jaguar Paw didn't run, he charged forward. In the blink of an eye, he ducked low, grabbing a weapon from the ground. Middle Eye's club grazed the top of his head, but Jaguar Paw had already turned, weapon in hand. With one fierce swing, he struck Middle Eye across the face. Middle Eye dropped to his knees. Jaguar Paw followed with an upward strike, ending him right there. At last, he had avenged his father, but the general was still coming now with only 2 men left by his side. Rain began to pour. Jaguar Paw knew what he had to do. He turned and raced back to the village. There, in the pit, he saw them, his wife and children, still clinging to life in the rising water, but he had no time to save them now. He turned away and ran again. That brief pause cost him. The general had already caught up. Jaguar Paw reached a fork in the path, desperately looking for an escape, but before he could move, an arrow slammed into his shoulder. Gritting his teeth, he snapped off the shaft and glared at the general. The general tossed aside his bow, drawing the same blade that once belonged to his son. He was going to finish this up close. As he charged, Jaguar Paw stood completely still, because he wasn't running anymore. This was the tribe's hunting ground. Right behind him was a trap. The general charged and was instantly impaled by sharpened wooden spikes. His vengeance turned to shock as life left his body, but the danger wasn't over yet. The final 2 soldiers appeared. Jaguar Paw, bleeding and barely able to stand, forced himself to flee one more time. He ran until his legs gave out and collapsed on the shore. There it was, the ocean. The 2 soldiers stopped. They didn't attack him. Instead, their eyes locked on something in the distance. Out on the water was a massive ship, a colossal vessel, unlike anything they had ever seen. From it, men stepped ashore, Western explorers clad in armor, carrying flags and strange weapons that sparkled with metal and fire. It was the arrival of another world, a different kind of power. The Maya warriors stood frozen, stunned by the sight. Jaguar Paw, seeing the opportunity, turned and ran back to the forest. His wife and children were still alive, waiting for him. He rescued them at last, and the family reunited deep in the jungle. Together, they looked back at the ocean. Their eyes were filled with uncertainty. His wife wondered, should they seek help from the newcomers? But Jaguar Paw shook his head. He believed those outsiders would be even more dangerous than the Maya invaders. So they turned again, vanishing into the depths of the jungle, searching for a place untouched by war, free from fear. But in the face of this new, advanced civilization, would there still be peace left in the forest? I'm a movie enthusiast. Please subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.